He's cornered, a wedding banquet before him, but the groom isn't who he expected. A talented chef now has to marry the daughter of a rival clan? How did an ordinary cook get caught in such a deadly political web? To understand how it all started, let's go back to the beginning of his insane journey. The fire roared in the pan, and its aroma filled everything, marking the beginning of an obsession that would change my destiny. I was completely dedicated to Chinese cuisine, and there was nothing in the world that could stop me from cooking with passion. I remember well when I was little, and my father would open the door smiling, saying only, "Son, let's eat," with joy. "Wow, it's Jajangmyeon!" I would shout, seeing that dark, shiny pasta that looked like a true sacred treasure in the bowl before me. The sweet and salty black bean sauce fried in perfect harmony with the pork and chopped onions. "Is it good?" my father would ask, and I just shook my head with a mouthful of noodles, replying with a loud, "Yes! Jajangmyeon is the most delicious dish in the whole world," and it was there that this delicacy captured my heart forever. As soon as I turned 18, I went to China to study, focused on the dream of becoming the best chef in the world. But reality hit hard, and I realized that talent alone wouldn't open the locked doors of those traditional kitchens. Huh? I was surprised when I saw the others whispering, while I thought that skill and ambition would be enough. The chef stopped in front of me, put his hand on my shoulder, and blurted out, "Wait, let's check your guanxi now." "What? Chef?" I stammered, feeling a chill in my stomach as he stared at me with those eyes that looked like judging lasers. "Guanxi is like having connections," he explained, checking if I was from the same family, region, or school, and the result was disastrous. "Damn," I muttered, seeing that it was impossible for me to have any Chinese roots that would guarantee me a place of respect there. "Result, calculation done. No relation whatsoever," he sentenced, throwing me to the ground with the weight of a tradition I didn't belong to. "Please, chef, just one more chance," I pleaded desperately, but the world of Chinese cuisine was much more closed off than I imagined. "No connections, no job. Go home now," he said, embracing the other apprentices and leaving me alone in the cold of rejection. The ship departed, and I gazed at the horizon, feeling the bitterness of failure mixed with the salt of the turbulent sea. Damn, they say nepotism exists in any era or nation, I reflected, feeling the weight of injustice crush my youthful plans. "But this is too much," I cried, feeling tears burn as the ship cut through the roaring waves towards my country. My hand gripped the railing tightly, and I made my last sincere wish before everything changed forever. "If I die and wake up again, I hope I never return to your country," I shouted to the sea. And suddenly, "What was that noise?" asked the captain, but it was already too late for any warning or desperate emergency maneuver. On the way back, I suffered a bizarre accident and was thrown into the icy waters, diving into the deep darkness of the endless ocean. I need to calmly swim to the surface, I thought, fighting against panic, until something enormous appeared before my wide eyes. A gigantic whale appeared out of nowhere, and I almost swallowed water seeing the size of that creature blocking my path. A whale? My heart almost stopped, its beats echoing like war drums inside my chest, about to explode. I need to calm down. Whales don't attack humans, right? I tried to convince myself, thinking it was just there out of innocent curiosity, but the creature opened its mouth, a cavern of total darkness, and I realized that the rules of nature had just changed. "I'm going to die," was my last thought before being swallowed by absolute darkness and the deadly silence of the deep sea. The world disappeared for an instant, time stopped, and I felt my existence being fragmented into 1,000 pieces. I still don't know what happened, but the sensation of being pulled away from death was real and very frightening. Light began to emerge again, filtered by something that no longer looked like the salty ocean water that almost killed me. The silence of the forest replaced the roar of the sea, and the glow of the full moon illuminated a scenery I had never seen before. When I opened my eyes, I was lying in a shallow lake surrounded by white flowers, feeling the fresh air enter my lungs. "Ah, my wish," I whispered, realizing that I was not in my country, but in a completely different and much older place. That's not quite what I meant, I reflected, realizing that I was now a young man named Ryu Cheongwoon in this strange world. The rain began to fall in the forest, and a man with a straw hat and a scar on his face looked up at the gray sky. It's raining. I should find a place to rest, he grumbled, feeling the moisture penetrate his wandering warrior clothes. Suddenly, he stopped, sensing hidden presences among the trees, moving like shadows waiting for the exact moment for a fatal attack. 2, 3, or even more, he counted mentally, keeping his hand near his sword as tension rose with every raindrop. If they surround me, I'll be lost, he thought, quickening his pace as he searched for any sign of civilization or safe shelter. He spotted a faint light ahead and paused for a second, evaluating whether it would be his refuge or his tomb. It was the Goodnight Inn, newly opened and shining in the rain, a silent invitation in the middle of that dangerous and deserted road. Inside the inn, Ryu Cheongwoon energetically wiped the tables, smiling at finally having a place he could call his own. Finally! My business is finally ready, I celebrated, sweeping the floor with an excitement I hadn't felt in a long time. I was radiant, cleaning every bowl and organizing the chopsticks, ready to welcome my first customer with all the hospitality in the world. Let's go, I said to myself, finishing writing the grand opening sign with brush and black ink, feeling destiny call. The door creaked, and I froze with emotion, seeing the silhouette of a man enter. Ah, my first customer. Welcome. The man cut me off with a cold, distant voice. Dumplings and a bottle of strong liquor. I just smiled and replied, "Of course, sir." He's my first customer, so I'll smile despite his demeanor, I thought, promising myself the order would be ready in a flash. But as I turned, I heard a heavy metallic sound that instantly froze the blood in my trembling veins. The man placed something on the table with a grim look. Ah, and take this too. I couldn't believe what I was seeing there. There were 3 silver ingots and a sword stuck through the table. Oh my God! A sword? I screamed internally, sensing imminent danger. No, no, no! I stammered, realizing the payment wasn't just for the food, but for something far more sinister that was coming. Running an inn in the Central Plains is all the same, isn't it? He said, his voice sounding like a warning that hell was about to break loose. Just consider this the price paid to avoid greater misfortune, he finished, and, in the next instant, the sound of splintering wood echoed. Chaos erupted. The ceiling was torn apart, and masked figures leaped inside, transforming my neatly kept inn into a true bloody battlefield. The straw-hatted warrior rose, ready for combat, as the bandits advanced with knives and axes gleaming under the torches. The ceiling! They broke the ceiling! I cried out in despair, seeing my dreams shattered by those Murim madmen who respected nothing. Look! The coward ran inside! A bandit shouted, charging forward as I tried to protect the sliding door of my kitchen. The man in the hat drew his sword with superhuman speed. I know I'm late, he began, as steel sliced through the air. In one fluid movement, he blocked the attacks of several bandits simultaneously, sparks flying as my inn was torn apart. But congratulations on your business, he finished, with a sarcastic smile that sent me even further into panic amidst the chaos. What? Exclaimed the bandit leader, surprised by the strength of that single man who was decimating his group with terrifying ease. Blood splattered and cries of pain filled the hall as I cowered in a corner, praying no blade would find me. Get out of the way! Kill him! They roared, but the warrior was like a steel storm, cutting them down one by one without hesitation. I looked at the 3 silver ingots and the destruction around me, feeling that the price of that dinner was far too high. I remembered his words about the ingots and the sword, realizing he already knew the place would be destroyed by his pursuers. Stop this. Please, stop, I whispered, watching the expensive furniture I'd bought with so much effort turn into firewood. The warrior advanced like a demon, declaring he would destroy everything. I'll ruin your place of business, he promised, mercilessly. Attack all together, the bandits shouted, and I realized they were heading towards the only place still standing. They're going for the kitchen, I screamed, watching the horde advance into my sanctuary, smashing everything in their violent path. Silence fell for a second after the last crash, and I stood there, amidst the wreckage, unable to believe the disaster. My head throbbed, and tears began to stream down my face, dirty with dust and despair, seeing my new beginning ruined. My second life begins now, I said with a choked voice, holding what remained of a scroll in my trembling hands. But I just started, I lamented, seeing that the inn I had lovingly cleaned was now a graveyard of wood and bodies. "I'm ruined," I murmured, falling to my knees with a broom in my hand, surrounded by knocked-out bandits and tables split into 1,000 pieces. "These Murim guys are the worst," I grumbled, looking at the punctured ceiling through which the cold rain entered without permission or apology. "I never want to cross paths with them again in my life," I promised myself, feeling the weight of the world crushing my shoulders. Suddenly, a grave voice came from the destroyed entrance. "Is the owner here?" My heart almost leaped out of my mouth with the sudden fright. "A customer?" I asked, seeing 3 elegant silhouettes standing against the light of the door, contrasting with the absolute chaos of the hall I managed. A noble man and a veiled woman appeared. "We wanted to rest here as it's raining heavily outside," he calmly explained. I clutched the broom tightly and took a deep breath. "Right. This isn't the time for that. We'll welcome them with a smile, no matter what." "Look, a person!" exclaimed one of the children accompanying the nobles, looking at me as if I were some exotic creature. "Welcome," I said with my best forced smile, ignoring the dirt and the fact that the roof was literally open. "Die, you demon!" their small servant shouted, landing a surprise blow that made me spit out what little dignity I had left. The situation was a complete disaster. My inn was in ruins, and now I was being attacked by the very customers who were supposed to save me. "Ah, so that's why this place is such a mess," commented the noble, observing the wreckage with a calmness that irritated me. The veiled woman approached. "The servant only attacked to protect us. Please forgive us for this misunderstanding," she said sweetly. "It's all right, I forgive you," I replied, still dazed. "The annex is fine, so you can stay there. But most of the ingredients are spoiled. Only fried wheat noodles are left." The noble merely smiled. "That's perfectly fine. This is no time to be picky about food. Don't worry." "We'll stay here today, Chung," said the father to his veiled daughter, and she merely replied with a soft, "Yes, father. I'll prepare the food then," I said, but stopped mid-sentence as I stared intently at the face of the mysterious and noble young woman. Her eyes, they were a deep, luminous blue, as if they held the entire ocean within those magnificent and rare irises. "Wow, how beautiful!" I let slip, but her father immediately stepped in front with a protective gaze. "She is my daughter. What a fright!" I screamed, jumping back. "Don't be shocked. She's not a ghost," he joked, and I replied that I was startled by him. "My wife is from the north. That's why my daughter has unique eyes." "Stop staring, you impudent innkeeper," he scolded me. He explained that people always pointed fingers at her, calling her a barbarian, which made her very shy and reclusive. But she's so beautiful, I thought, feeling that for the first time my business was attracting high-class customers, despite all the destruction. I can't leave things like this, I decided, realizing I needed to fix the bad impression I'd made and show that I was a true professional. "Miss, I feel I was inadvertently discourteous to you," I began, bowing formally before young Chung, who seemed nervous at my approach. "They say eyes are like lakes, haven't they? For centuries?" "Your eyes are exactly like that. Please forgive my fixed gaze," I said sincerely. "I'll cook now." I rushed towards the back, leaving young Chung paralyzed and her face flushed beneath her light veil. She remained silent, processing my words, something no one had probably ever had the courage or kindness to say to her before. "They're beautiful. My eyes," she whispered to herself, feeling her heart pound as she timidly clutched her hands. I entered the kitchen, and the scene was one of war. Pots tossed aside, flour scattered, and the ceiling dripping right onto my stone stove. "My kitchen," I lamented, seeing that the only place I felt safe was now in tatters because of those crazy, brutal warriors. "No! I need to pull myself together," I shouted to myself, slapping my own face to wake up and focus on what truly mattered now. Even if this was the worst inn launch in human history, I wasn't going to give up without fighting with the weapons I knew best. "I, Ryu Cheongwoon, will not fall so easily," I declared, tying the headband around my forehead with a determination that could move the surrounding mountains. My hands moved with precision, grabbing the knife and the few ingredients that were still good enough to be used on that difficult night. My feet planted firmly on the dirty floor, and I felt the energy flowing. A true chef cooks anywhere, even in the middle of a desert. The value of an inn is decided by the taste of its food, I shouted, tossing the noodles into the boiling water with a theatrical and epic flourish. Ah! I should clean first, I suddenly realized, seeing the mess around me and frantically scrubbing everything to maintain a minimum of hygiene. Even a frog was observing me from the broken window, as if judging my culinary skills amidst so much trash and destruction. The little maid whined with hunger in the hall, drumming on the table as she desperately waited for anything edible. I'm going to starve to death, she cried, while the other child tried to calm her, saying no one died of hunger in just a few minutes. It's been quite a while. Is the food still not? The noble began, but he stopped speaking the exact moment a scent invaded the air. The aroma was indescribable, something dense, rich, and utterly new that made his nostrils flare with a power he had never felt before. Apologies for the long wait, I announced, emerging from the kitchen with steaming bowls and a look that showed I knew exactly what I was doing. Elders first, I said, as the little girl yelled, just give it to me, you idiot innkeeper! But I maintained etiquette and composure. What is this? It's all black? Didn't you say you'd bring wheat noodles? The noble asked, staring at the pasta covered in the dark sauce. Yes, I replied with confidence. But this is no ordinary noodle. This is my unique creation, something you've never seen before. The sauce's sheen reflected the torchlight, and the pieces of meat and vegetables looked like jewels dipped in a sea of delicious obsidian. I explained it was an icon from a country to the east, something I'd brought from another life to save this inn from total ruin. It's Jaegal, sir, I announced, and the name echoed like a powerful spell within that destroyed hall, now silenced by general curiosity. The Jaegal sat there, imposing, with slices of fresh cucumber and half a boiled egg on top, challenging everything they knew about food. I understood the appearance was strange to them, but I knew the secret lay in the flavor I had just created. But the food is black, the little girl commented, bringing her face closer to the bowl with a mix of fear and in curiosity she couldn't hide. It looks burnt? The noble asked again, but I merely gestured for him to take the first bite without any fear. I would not serve something impossible to eat. Please, just try it and see with your own eyes and palate, I challenged, maintaining my professional smile. It's delicious, the little girl whispered after the first bite, and the noble stared at her with wide eyes, surprised by the immediate positive reaction. It's sweet and so flavorful. Try it quickly, sir, she shouted, already attacking the bowl with a speed that would make any martial arts master envious. My body! Whoo! My body is moving on its own, she exclaimed, feeling the explosion of flavor overwhelm all her senses at once. The noble hesitated for another second, looking at me and then at the bowl, feeling that he was about to cross a point of no return. The food looks extremely bizarre, but I cannot resist this wonderful smell, he admitted, finally picking up his chopsticks and bringing the noodles to his mouth. It's a dangerous taste. It's like, the little girl said, chewing happily, as if she had found paradise amidst that torrential rain. Like it's mixed with drugs. I feel like I'm getting addicted to it, the maid exclaimed, and I gave a sidelong smile, knowing exactly why. Did you figure it out? I thought, recalling the secret ingredient I used to ensure they'd never forget the taste of my food. That intoxicant was MSG, monosodium glutamate, the soul of umami flavor that I had replicated using only natural ingredients found there. For the sauce, I used fermented bean grains and wheat, grinding everything and mixing in salt to create the perfect, traditional base for the dish. Korean chunjang uses caramel, but since that doesn't exist here, I had to use modern culinary science to improvise and avoid failure. The taste wasn't the same with just the basics, so I sought out the natural glutamic acid present in other foods to give it that addictive, powerful punch. I used seaweed and shiitake mushrooms, which have the highest concentration of umami in nature, drying and fermenting everything until it became a magical powder. Perfect! The addictive aroma of delicious food is complete, I mentally cheered, watching the noble swallow hard before tasting the result of my work. He hesitated, his throat moving as the scent rose and dominated his brain, begging for just one bite of that dark, glistening pasta. Using the terms of this world of fighters, I didn't just create a sauce. I created a supreme technique that no one could ignore or resist. My sauce was on a level they could never imagine, a true masterpiece, crafted by hands that knew the future of global gastronomy. He finally ate. His eyes widened, pupils dilated, and the world around him simply vanished for a few seconds of pure culinary ecstasy. At the celestial demon level, they could easily call this the celestial demon sauce for the power and impact it had on his palate. He began slurping the noodles with hungry fury, the sound echoing through the hall as he forgot all his nobility and etiquette. Each bite was a new revelation, a blend of textures and flavors he never thought could exist in such a simple, rustic dish. He swallowed and took a deep breath, looking like a man who had just discovered the meaning of life in a crumbling inn. Before you know it, you're already devouring everything. It's a completely natural reaction, I thought, feeling a chef's pride swell in my tired chest. A colorful variation of sweetness and richness, the sauce enveloped each noodle strand like a warm hug on a cold night. The flavor of the pork was deeply infused into the pasta, and he shivered, feeling that this was basically the pinnacle of world cuisine. A black utopia. It's heaven, he thought, feeling himself float in a universe of flavor while the real world continued to reign outside. As they ate, the sound of the crows outside seemed distant, and peace finally reigned inside the inn, sealed by the power of good food. The girls looked sideways at young Chung, who still hadn't touched her bowl, maintaining etiquette even with her stomach rumbling. She was in absolute silence, observing her father's and the servants' exaggerated reactions, seeming confused by such enthusiasm for a strange black dish. The noble gasped, wiping the sauce from his face, with a smile of satisfaction I rarely saw in such a demanding and powerful client. He finished everything, looking at the empty bowl with a sadness of someone who never wanted that moment to end. Cough, cough! He tried to regain his noble posture, wiping his mouth and looking around to see if anyone had noticed his loss of control. I can definitely call this a success, I thought, but I noticed something strange that made me stop smiling for a moment of concern. She didn't take a single bite. Miss, why aren't you eating anything? I asked young Chong, who remained still before the food. Is there something you don't like? I insisted, and she began to get restless, which made me curious about what was going on in her head. Her father looked at her, then at me, and the silence that followed was heavy, charged with an expectation I couldn't decipher. Noble placed his hand on the table and declared, Chong, the food is very delicious, but will my modern seasoning win the heart of the blue noble lady? He insists that she eat without worries, assuring her that he is by her side, while the young woman merely agrees silently. Ryu Cheongwoon observes the scene, feeling like a fish out of water, mentally begging for someone to invent paper towels soon. Suddenly, the air in the room thickens as the young woman decides to remove the veil covering her delicate face. Ryu is paralyzed with shock to see that the girl's lips are swollen and her face is completely red. He tries to stammer something, but the surprise is so great that the words simply die on his stuttering tongue. Jaegal Clan notices the chef's astonishment and comments in a serious tone that he seems shocked to see his daughter. The patriarch explains that the young woman has suffered from an unknown illness since she was just a small, fragile child. Recently, this mysterious condition has worsened greatly, and they were on their way to Sichuan in search of some legendary doctor. He sighs deeply, wiping the sauce from his face and hoping that this time they find a definitive cure for the problem. Ryu watches the scene with a heavy heart, thinking of the injustice of such a cruel illness affecting someone so young. Disaster strikes in a blink of an eye, as Cheong loses her balance and collapses heavily onto the inn's floor. Panic takes over the place, and the desperate father screams for his daughter to wake up as quickly as possible. Jaegal Clan's fury explodes like a volcano, and he lunges at Ryu, shouting, "You scoundrel! What did you give her?" The assistants start running in circles, accusing the innkeeper of being a murderer who tried to poison the young mistress. The master unleashes his murderous aura, transforming into a ferocious tiger ready to tear apart anyone in his path. Ryu raises his trembling hands and tries to explain that he only served ordinary pasta with his black sauce creation. The girl continues to cough violently, struggling for every ounce of oxygen as her body reacts aggressively. Her father ignores everything around him, focused only on his daughter's suffering, which seems to be slipping through his fingers. It's an absolute emergency, and Jaegal Clan begs her to open her eyes, but her consciousness is already gone. He orders everyone to move away immediately, as he intends to inject his own vital energy to try to stabilize his daughter's body. The master holds the young woman's hands tightly, asking her to hold on for a few more seconds of agony. He concentrates all his inner power into a single point, preparing for the dangerous process of energy transfer. The tension in the hall is so great that it feels like the wooden walls will explode at any moment. The energy shock causes the surrounding furniture to tremble, and those present to watch the scene with total disbelief. It is a powerful cultivation technique that few masters in the world would be capable of performing with such absolute precision. Ryu looks at the ruined ceiling and laments the fact that his inn is being reduced to rubble again. The master remains focused on his daughter, ignoring the chaos and debris flying throughout the inn's hall. Ryu carefully observes the girl's symptoms, and a flash of understanding happens in his modern chef's mind. The swollen face, extreme shortness of breath, cold sweat, and skin rashes are very clear signs. Upon hearing that she has always been like this, Ryu begins to connect the dots and realizes that the problem is not mystical. Meanwhile, the father continues to force the energy transfer, believing that this is the only way to save her. The impact of Jaegal Clan's power creates shockwaves that push everyone present away from the scene. Dust rises, and the scene of destruction within the newly opened inn becomes something worthy of a battlefield. The patriarch's effort is visible, but the young woman's symptoms don't seem to improve with the traditional healing technique. Ryu's eyes widen as he realizes the master's intervention might be irreversibly worsening the situation. He focuses on the girl's swollen glands and neck, confirming every symptom of an extremely severe allergic reaction. The chef realizes that if he doesn't act now, young Chung won't have the slightest chance of surviving today. Jaegal Clan screams in despair as he feels his daughter's energy flowing in the opposite direction of its natural current. Ryu rushes towards the master, shouting to get his attention before the worst comes to pass right there. The master looks at him with bloodshot eyes and orders the brat to step back or die. Ryu ignores the threat and tries to ask if the young lady's pulse is too weak to be felt normally. The question makes the warrior hesitate for a second, looking at the chef with an expression of pure doubt and shock. He stops the energy transfer and realizes that the young chef's words make sense in this moment of crisis. The chef insists on the question, and the master confirms that her pulse is almost fading under his trembling fingers. Ryu asks to check for himself, and the master, in an act of utter desperation, allows him to approach. The young chef places his fingers on the girl's wrist and feels the faint beat, confirming his worst medical suspicions. The impact of the revelation makes Ryu stumble, while the assistants fall to the ground, not understanding what is happening. Chaos is absolute, but Ryu knows that he is now the only one capable of saving her life. Jaegal Clan asks if the chef also masters secret medicinal arts to know so much about her condition. Ryu scratches his head awkwardly and says it's not quite medicine, but rather an experience he carries. The master lowers his head and lets out a whisper laden with a pain no warrior should feel for a child. With tears in his eyes, the patriarch pleads from the depths of his soul, "Please, save my beloved daughter." The sun begins to set on the horizon, casting an orange light that illuminates the ruined and silent inn. Ryu grabs a basin of water and begins preparations for what will be his most daring maneuver. The master watches, confused by what the chef is doing, while the girls murmur about the black bean noodles. Ryu states that the crucial first step is to immediately remove what is blocking the young woman's throat. He confirms that the severe swelling at the base of the tongue is completely obstructing Lady Jaegal Clan's airways. He no longer doubts that this is anaphylactic shock, caused by a specific ingredient in the recipe. Ryu remembers a client in his past life who died exactly like this, destroying the career of a promising chef. The chef tries to recall every detail of the recipe to find the culprit behind this imminent and terrible tragedy. He asks everyone to wait while he analyzes the plate fallen on the ground amidst the remnants of noodles and black sauce. Suddenly, he sees the culprit, the seeds and nuts used in the garnish to add crunch to the pasta dish. Guilt hits Ryu like a punch to the gut, and he murmurs to himself that it's all his fault. He feels unworthy of being called a chef for forgetting to consider the possibility of a food allergy. Ryu stares at the master and asks if he is willing to save his daughter, No matter what happens now, Jaegal Clan confirms with a firm gaze, even without understanding what kind of method the young chef intends to use on her. The chef takes a deep breath, apologizes in advance, and begins to act under the watchful eyes of everyone in the inn. He leans over the young woman and, to everyone's horror, presses his lips against hers in a kiss. Choi Jung and the other assistants spontaneously combust mentally, screaming that the inn owner is a disgusting pervert. The master is petrified, unable to process the scene unfolding right before his fatherly eyes. The assistants order the little ones to bite the chef to death for this absurd disrespect against the lady's honor. They cling to Ryu's arms, calling him a lustful demon, but he doesn't stop what he's doing for anything. Ryu continues the compressions and breathing, ignoring the pain of the bites and the surrounding chaos with incredible resolve. He repeats to himself that he must save her, whatever the cost, for her life depends solely on his effort. The scene is tense, and time seems to have stopped as the chef fights against death with his bare hands. The master finally awakens from his trance and unleashes a murderous intent that makes the ground tremble beneath his feet. Ryu feels the overwhelming pressure, but knows that if he stops now, the girl's heart will stop beating forever. Jaegal Clan roars, asking how he dares to dishonor his daughter like this, while Ryu feels he can't even breathe anymore. The master decrees that the chef won't even have the right to last words before being executed for this vile crime. Ryu recognizes that he is facing a legendary-level martial master just from the aura emanating from his body. Even with fear paralyzing his bones, the chef decides he will continue the procedure until his last second of life. The patriarch lunges with a mortal blow, ordering the young man to get his filthy hands off his precious daughter. The assistants close their eyes, lamenting the chef's certain death and the tragic end of his culinary journey in the Murum. The master is about to deliver the final strike to end the life of the one he believes to be a scoundrel. In the last millisecond, Ryu clenches his teeth and lets out a cry that echoes throughout the destroyed inn. He glares into the master's eyes and yells, "Are you just going to let your daughter die because of pride?" Jaegal Clan's blow stops mere inches from Ryu's face as he processes the seriousness in the chef's gaze. The master realizes that the young man is not acting out of lust, but rather risking his own life to save hers. He wonders why this stranger would be willing to die just to save a customer he barely knows. Suddenly, young Chong begins to cough and regain the color in her face that had been pale moments before. Her father rushes to her side, shouting his daughter's name with a mixture of relief and pure paternal agony. She slowly opens her eyes and whispers, "Father," confirming that life has finally returned to her fragile body. Ryu collapses to his knees, panting, feeling every muscle in his body trembling after such immense physical and mental exertion. He looks at his own hands, still unable to believe he managed to perform such a medical miracle in such a hostile world. The master asks her to conserve her energy, while the young assistants cry tears of joy upon seeing their mistress alive. They celebrate the fact that the master took care of the pervert, but Ryu is too exhausted to care about insults. The chef looks at the full moon and thinks that the near-death incident on the first day of opening is finally over. He reflects on how running his own business in the Murum world is much harder than he ever imagined. The sounds of the night return to reign in the inn, as emotions begin to settle after so much accumulated stress. Hours later, Ryu lies in his bed, murmuring pleas for help and wanting to call the police for being assaulted. He has nightmares about the furious master and wakes up startled, screaming for someone to report that senseless violence. Ryu realizes he's in his room and wonders what happened after he collapsed from sheer physical exhaustion. He feels a powerful presence beside the bed and freezes upon seeing the master sitting there, observing him in silence. The chef panics completely, thinking he's about to get beaten again because of the mouth-to-mouth resuscitation he performed. Jaegal Clan signals him to calm down and says, "Since we are now acquainted, allow me to formally introduce myself." He reveals himself to be the patriarch of the legendary Jaegal Clan, and the name Jaegal Clan makes Ryu's eyes widen in surprise. The master adopts a friendly demeanor and asks for the name of the young man who saved his daughter's life. Ryu is still processing the information that he just performed CPR on the daughter of one of the most powerful men. To try and win the master's favor, Ryu begins to recite phrases from an ancient book on military discipline. Jaegal Clan is shocked to see that the chef knows the scriptures and sacred teachings of his noble ancestors. The young man explains that every soldier must be disciplined and cultivate virtue through frugality and a calm mind. The patriarch stands up, animated, asking how a mere inn chef could know his family's book of commandments. Ryu declares that Master Jaegal Muhu is the person he admires most in the entire history of this crazy world. The master places his hand on Ryu's shoulder, sensing that the young man is a person of exceptional character and culture. Ryu still fears getting slapped, but what comes next is something that will change his life forever. The patriarch breaks into a wide smile and says, "From this day forward, become a part of my family." The chef is confused, trying to understand if this is an invitation for adoption or something much deeper within the muram. He realizes that the master is offering a guanxi, a social bond that guarantees protection and status throughout the region. If he has the protection of the Jaegal clan, his life at the inn will be much more peaceful and safe from bandits. No low-level martial artist would dare mess with someone who carries the name of such a powerful and respected family. Ryu doesn't think twice before accepting, and apologizes for the delay in properly introducing himself to the noble. He proudly states his name, Ryu Cheongwoon, and the master seems to quite like the sound of it. The patriarch laughs, saying his name means blue cloud, which perfectly matches his daughter's name. Ryu gets a little worried about the direction of the conversation, but the master assures him he has nothing to fear. He states that the misunderstanding of their first encounter is in the past, and now Ryu is truly one of them. The chef feels the warmth of the patriarch's embrace and realizes he has finally found a safe haven in this dangerous world. They begin to converse about ages and origins, while Ryu brazenly lies, saying he came from Fujian province to protect himself. Outside, the young assistants are working hard under the moonlight to repair the inn's destroyed roof. The night passes quickly, and dawn brings a new perspective for Ryu's business, which almost failed yesterday. He wakes up and looks around, impressed by the speed with which the place was rebuilt by the clan warriors. Not a single speck of blood or debris remains. The tables are clean, and the hall looks brand new. Ryu hears a noise coming from the kitchen and grumbles that there aren't any decent ingredients to cook anything quality with right now. Curious, he steps into the kitchen to see who's attempting to cook so early and what culinary disaster they're brewing. He finds the little assistants making a Herculean effort, but the food itself appears to be a very suspicious, strange shade of purple. Ryu wonders if this is some secret murim cuisine he's yet to encounter or master. He quickly concludes that the food is simply horrendous, and they haven't the slightest clue how to cook. The chef tries to ignore it, but the girls desperately plead for help, explaining that the madam hasn't eaten a thing since the incident. They admit he might be a pervert, but acknowledge he's a master chef who works miracles. Ryu sighs, realizing the responsibility of feeding the patient has once again fallen onto his weary innkeeper chef's shoulders. He remembers his crucial role in her collapse, and feels compelled to atone for his mistake with a perfect meal. The chef takes control of the kitchen, startling the assistants with his natural authority as he grips the kitchen knife. He ties his bandana tightly, entering the professional mode that made him a renowned chef in his past life. Ryu orders them to wait and begins chopping vegetables with a speed that mere mortal eyes can't follow. He vows to prepare the most delicious invalid food in the entire world to ensure young Chung's complete recovery. The girls watch from afar, calling him a reliable pervert as the chef completely masters the stove's flames. The news that young Master Ryu is personally cooking reaches the ears of the madam, who is still in bed. The bowl of porridge is served, exuding a comforting aroma that fills the entire room and awakens the young lady's appetite. The assistants beg her to take just one bite, assuring her the taste is something she's never experienced before. They explain that Ryu ground and chopped everything very finely so as not to hurt her still sensitive throat. Furthermore, he took a level of care in preparing someone's food that no one else in this world would ever bother with. Ryu realized that the madam's physical constitution doesn't handle any kind of nuts or oil seeds well. He slices cucumbers with millimeter precision, explaining that nuts were the true villains behind her nearly fatal allergic crisis. The assistants recall that she always fell ill after eating nuts, but no one had ever made that obvious connection before. The chef warns that it's not just peanut oil, but no form of seed should ever come near her again. He demonstrates absolute rigor, tossing ingredients into the air and dicing them with choreographed movements worthy of a true knife master. Ryu demands that the madam's food be handled with strict rules from now on to prevent contamination. He uses fire to seal the flavors, creating a dance of flames that leaves the assistants completely dumbfounded with admiration. He instructs that even her knives and cutting boards must be kept separate from anything containing seeds or nuts. The assistants, Choi Jung, listen intently, realizing that Ryu's cooking is as complex as any high-level martial arts technique. He takes full responsibility for her while she's at the inn, promising that nothing harmful will ever enter her dish again. One of the assistants grows so hungry that she asks for some of the food too, unable to resist the porridge's wonderful aroma. Upon tasting it, she feels Ryu's emotions infused into the meal, with a dedication that borders on the sacred. Cheong brings the first spoonful to her mouth, and feels that this soup is far kinder and warmer than any she's ever had. She lets out a sigh of satisfaction, feeling her body instantly recover under the power of that soulful medicinal cuisine. The little ones realize that what the madam is feeling is a direct connection to young Master Ryu's sincere heart. The image of the young lady floating among flowers perfectly encapsulates the ecstasy of flavor and the tenderness she feels with each spoonful. A few days pass, and the master announces that, thanks to Ryu's care, Chung is ready to safely continue her journey. Jaegal Chan grasps Ryu's hand tightly, calling his name with a gratitude the chef will never forget. He thanks him for curing his daughter's illness, and Ryu, now an ally of the clan, humbly requests he not even mention it. But before their departure, he mentions that Cheong has something special to deliver. The young lady takes out a jade object and delicately extends it towards him. Ryu Cheongwoon freezes, his eyes nearly popping out as he realizes what it is. A symbol of gratitude? In the Murim world, this object is a master key that opens all doors. Ryu knows this is worth more than any mountain of pure gold. He tries to politely refuse, saying he doesn't deserve something so valuable. Patriarch Jaegal lets out a laugh and insists that, with their bond, this is nothing. The chef simply accepts, thinking that Guanxi thing really is the best in this world. Meanwhile, the assistants Choi Jung complain about the weight of the bags they have to carry. Jaegal Chan places a hand on Ryu's shoulder and announces that he will prepare a ceremony soon. Ryu remains utterly clueless as to what kind of celebration the old man is talking about. In the master's mind, he envisions a blood brother ceremony beneath the cherry blossom trees. Ryu merely agrees with a forced smile, unwilling to offend the powerful lord. The group bids farewell and begins walking away from the small inn. They wave, promising to see each other soon for that special celebration. The patriarch hurries his daughter, saying they need to stick to the schedule. Chung glances back one last time, her face flushing crimson beneath her mask. Her father finishes the sentence with a mischievous grin. We have a lot of work to do for your wedding. Time passes, and the kitchen routine once again becomes the center of Ryu's world. The inn now feels like a different place, filled with the rhythmic sound of knives. It's been some time since the Jaegal clan went their way and left Ryu in peace, but the generosity of that noble family changed everything for the young chef. He reads a letter where the patriarch explains he sent 500 coins and a helper for the busy days. The small helper, Choi Jung, demands a bowl of noodles in exchange for handing over the money. Ryu panics as he watches the little girl devour everything with terrifying speed. With the investment, the Goodnight Inn was completely renovated, upgraded to version 2.0. Ryu prepares vegetable and meat dishes that look like perfect works of art. The problem is, the dining hall remains empty, and he wonders where the customers are. Despair hits hard as he realizes the renovation money is almost gone. He questions what could be wrong, since his food is the best in the region. Suddenly, the door is thrown open with a thunderous crash that makes the floor tremble. Ryu breaks into a wide smile, thinking his first customer has finally arrived. But the sound of heavy rhythmic footsteps doesn't seem to belong to an ordinary traveler. An entire troop of armed soldiers storms the place and surrounds the counter. Even startled, the chef tries to maintain his composure and offers seats to everyone. A small, bald man emerges from among the guards, and glares at Ryu with arrogance. Ryu politely replies that he is the owner and master chef of the establishment. He's already calculating the profit this enormous group of officers will bring, but his smile dies the moment he sees ropes being prepared. Ryu is dragged to the Sichuan provincial government office under curious gazes. A corpulent, powerful man observes the scene while devouring a chicken leg. The assistant confirms he's captured the target and serves a drink to his lord. That is Po Daryun, the corrupt magistrate who rules the entire region with an iron fist. Ryu tries to shout that there must be some mistake, for he has never committed any crime. A guard slams his staff on the ground and orders immediate silence from the prisoner. The magistrate mutters softly that the inn seems profitable and easy to seize. He tosses the food scraps aside and orders the sentence to be read now. The assistant unrolls a scroll and accuses Ryu of tax evasion and operating illegally. Ryu is bewildered, hearing names of associations he never even knew existed. The order is clear: confiscate all properties and throw the chef into a dark cell. Desperate, Ryu struggles against the ropes, vowing that this is a tremendous injustice. The guards violently throw him to the ground, and the atmosphere becomes heavy with tension. Po Daryun tells him to stop complaining, but something on the floor catches his attention. The jade symbol falls from Ryu's clothes and shines intensely under the light. The magistrate leaps from his chair and lets out a desperate shout for the guards to stop. He picks up the object with trembling hands and demands to know where Ryu got it. The official threatens to sever the chef's head if he's lying about the artifact. He demands to know if the young man stole or found that sacred symbol somewhere. Ryu calmly explains that an important client gave him the item as a token of friendship. The magistrate feels a chill down his spine and instantly breaks into a cold sweat. He realizes he almost made the biggest mistake of his miserable, corrupt life. The assistant looks on, confused, not understanding why his master's attitude changed so quickly. The henchman still tries to praise his boss's cruelty, thinking it's all part of a plan. Po Daryun whirls around and delivers a furious slap, hitting the assistant squarely in the face. Chaos erupts as the magistrate starts kicking everything in sight. Ryu watches the scene, utterly bewildered at how the tables turned in just a second. The magistrate screams that they brought an innocent man and forced him to kneel. The assistant tries to defend himself, stating he only followed his boss's own extortion orders. Po Daryun orders him to shut up and delivers a blow that sends the poor fellow flying. He orders the assistant to be arrested and gagged so he can't speak another word. With a false, fawning smile, the magistrate approaches Ryu to untie him. He insists that Ryu must call him older brother from now on. The official feigns a deep friendship, acting as if they've been intimate for decades. He whispers that now they are part of the same guanxi, and there's nothing to fear. The scene shifts to the magistrate's luxurious mansion, where a grand banquet is being served. He remarks that he never imagined encountering such a close member of the Jaegal Clan. A lavish table laden with dozens of expensive dishes is placed before the young chef. Ryu and Cheongwoon begin to eat, enjoying the official's forced hospitality. Po Daryun continues his fawning, calling Ryu his old bosom buddy. Ryu accepts the title of brother, musing on how truly small and dangerous the world is. He realizes the magistrate is terrified of the connections he possesses. The food tastes sweet, but Ryu knows it's the flavor of power that saved him. The magistrate thinks to himself that Ryu looks like a country bumpkin, yet possesses legendary items. He notices that the Patriarch's daughter's name is engraved on that piece of jade. In the official's mind, Ryu is nothing less than the secret fiancé of Lady Jaegal. The fear of having messed with the Patriarch's son-in-law makes the magistrate almost suffer a heart attack. Ryu notices the man acting strangely and asks if he's feeling well. He asks if anything is bothering his new older brother during dinner. The official pretends it's merely the heavy burden of his office that stresses him. Ryu observes that the magistrate hasn't touched his food and asks if he's knowledgeable about cuisine. Po Daryun admits that Sichuan dishes are good, but they don't compare to those from his homeland. He sighs with deep nostalgia, recalling the old days of his youth. Images of seagulls and the sound of ocean waves fill the stout man's mind. He speaks fondly of Guangdong, a place of wild seas and fresh fish. The magistrate gazes at the horizon, lost in memories of a time that will never return. He remembers when he was young, gazing at the sea with grand dreams in his heart. Back then, he swore he would rise in life to become a respected official. He wanted to be like the ocean, embracing common people with all his heart. The magistrate cries as he realizes he has become the exact opposite of the naive young man he once was. Ryu observes the man's sadness and begins to concoct a gastronomic plan in his head. He stands up with determination, startling the magistrate who was still in a trance. Ryu announces that, in gratitude for the hospitality, he himself will prepare a special dish. The mansion's kitchen becomes the stage for an unprecedented display of skill. Ryu commands the fire with precision as Choi Jung rushes to assist with the preparations. The pace is frenetic, and the flames dance to the orders of the master chef. He announces the start of the work and begins chopping ingredients with absurd speed. The sound of the knife hitting the cutting board echoes like a machine gun throughout the room. The mansion's cooks observe from hiding, wondering who that talented young man is. They comment that they heard rumors he is a close ally of the magistrate. Others are shocked to see a Sichuan noble cooking with his own hands. Ryu overhears the gossip about his pervert reputation and yells for them to stop spreading lies. He finishes preparing the side dishes and focuses on the recipe's main ingredient. Ryu knows that a nostalgic dish is the only thing that can comfort the officer's heart. The map shows that Guangdong is far, and getting fresh seafood there is almost impossible. But a true chef knows how to improvise with the best that local nature has to offer. He uses river crabs to replace the marine crustaceans the magistrate so dearly loves. Giant freshwater prawns go into the pot to give the dish its necessary texture. Fresh shellfish are cleaned and prepared to bring the aroma of the waters to the recipe. While the broth simmers, Ryu decides to create a spicy seasoning that doesn't exist in this era. He throws the selected herbs into the hot oil, initiating a chemical reaction of aromas. The vine herb fried in rapeseed oil creates the perfect base for his chili oil. Ryu explains that the mala flavor is the combination of deep numbness with intense heat. The famous floral herb oil completely transforms the flavor profile of that mixture. The assistants are dumbfounded by Ryu's mastery of wok technique. He cooks the noodles in boiling water and prepares the final attack with the aromatic oil. The boiling liquid is poured over the ingredients, releasing a cloud of fragrant steam. The intense aroma of mala eliminates any earthy smell from the freshwater ingredients. One of the cooks sighs as she smells the irresistible aroma that fills the entire kitchen. She wonders how such a spicy scent can be so alluring to the senses. They all agree that the young man isn't just skilled, he's simply too hot. Ryu finishes plating and declares that the dish is finally in its perfect form. He carries the bowl with pride, ready to serve his newly found brother. The officer looks at the dish and feels immediate respect for its impeccable presentation. He admits he's never seen anything like it and asks for the name of that mysterious delicacy. Ryu explains that he noticed the longing the officer felt for Guangdong and tried to emulate that feeling. He humbly says that he used his limited skills to bring a taste of home to the officer. The official name is Guangdong Mala Noodles, but for Ryu, it's his legendary seafood jampong. The magistrate tries to maintain his composure, saying that noodles from a failing inn shouldn't be a big deal, but a single glance at the broth's gleam was enough to make his eyes sparkle with anticipation. He immediately realizes that he's not facing an ordinary meal, but something sacred. The officer shouts that all of Guangdong has been captured within that small ceramic bowl. Ryu wishes him bon appetit, and the magistrate attacks the food with a wild fury. A cry of satisfaction echoes through the mansion as he devours the noodles non-stop. Choi Jung is impressed by the suction power the stout man demonstrates. He doesn't even use chopsticks properly, just shoves mountains of noodles into his mouth. Ryu is amazed to witness what he calls master-level facial noodle suction. The magistrate pauses for a second, lips smeared with broth and a lost look in his eyes. Suddenly, he sees a familiar figure and asks who that young man standing before him is. It's himself, 20 years younger, staring at the corrupt official with contempt. The young version asks if intimidating common people was truly the dream they once shared. The officer tries to argue, saying that without money and power, no one survives in this dog-eat-dog world. He yells that naive youngsters know nothing, but his voice trembles with uncertainty. Young Po Daryun merely stares at him with a sadness that hurts more than any blow. He asks if the officer truly believes these lies he tells himself. The magistrate feels his heart soften and tears begin to fall uncontrollably. He realizes that what he had longed for wasn't the sea or the seafood. He missed when he was pure, and only dreamed of making justice prevail. An intense light seems to unite past and present in an embrace of culinary redemption. The glow spreads throughout the mansion, as if a soul is being cleansed by the flavor. Ryu asks if he's all right, seeing the man in silence after the first bite. The magistrate finishes the meal and wipes his mouth, visibly transformed from within. He confirms the dish's name and admits that it made him reflect on his entire life. With a serious gaze, he locks eyes with Ryu and acknowledges that the young man is an absolute genius. He praises Ryu's incredible skill, not just in cooking, but in touching the very soul. Ryu is bewildered, unsure if he's created a dish or a technique for spiritual enlightenment. Choi Jong now thinks the magistrate is the coolest guy in the world, but Ryu still has his doubts. Under the full moon's glow, the magistrate returns to his work desk with a renewed posture. He signs official papers with a determination he hadn't shown in many years. The final order is given: return all confiscated money and items to Ryu's inn. He signs the prisoner's release and ensures Ryu is compensated for all the trouble caused by corruption. With an odd smile, the magistrate admits he made them both wait too long at this late hour of the night. He crosses his fingers and gets straight to the point. He heard the inn's business isn't doing well at all. Ryu scratches his head, uncomfortable, and confesses that not a single customer has shown up in ages. He even starts to doubt his own talent, but the magistrate assures him the problem isn't the divine food. The official calls upon his trusted men, Mr. Cheon and Mr. Byeon, to resolve the situation once and for all. He explains he'd like to help personally, but correcting his own past mistakes will consume all his time. Therefore, he presents a duo of specialists who will transform Ryu's business into a roaring success. The door bursts open with a bang, and the two eccentric figures immediately strike dramatic introductory poses. Ryu is in shock, unable to comprehend what kind of help he's about to receive from these two characters. Mr. Cheon is the culinary master, while Mr. Byeon dominates the region's beverage and hospitality scene. The magistrate assures them they are well versed in the world of business and will be the right-hand men Ryu needs. They charge forward with chaotic energy, shouting that they'll take this failed inn and make history in Mirim. With leaps and war cries, they promise to revive the place and take it to the absolute top of the market. Ryu sighs deeply, realizing he's now surrounded by even more people he simply cannot understand. The little mascot finds it all incredible, but Ryu cuts off her excitement with an immediate shout of denial. Before they depart, the magistrate still has the audacity to ask for another bowl of jampong to go. The sun rises, illuminating the mountains, bringing what should be a new beginning for the revitalized inn. The new consultants assess the facade and admit the place is far more impressive than they had imagined. Mr. Byeon analyzes the remote location and concludes that the path is good and the rooms are perfect for travelers. Suddenly, he stops and starts having spasms of horror, leaving everyone around him utterly bewildered. He lets out a scream that tears through the morning silence as he points to something above the main door. Ryu despairs, asking if there's a serious problem or if he made some unforgivable mistake in the renovation. Mr. Byeon yells that it's horrible and asks what kind of curse that lantern hanging there is. The little mascot brings the lantern closer, and the two specialists almost faint from sheer terror and despair. The chef is confused, asking if the object is possessed by some ghost or evil spirit of the region. Mr. Byeon explains that no one would ever enter there, as that lantern signifies a business that has already failed or closed. He pulls out a basic guide to business etiquette and curses Ryu as an ignorant barbarian for not knowing the fundamentals. The young man feels the weight of shame, realizing he couldn't possibly know the etiquette rules of this ancient era. He scours the memories of the original Ryu Cheongwoon, the former owner of that body, searching for any answers. He remembers that the old Ryu was a complete failure who only thought about martial arts, without any real talent. The guy was a total fool who knew nothing about business, let alone how to run an inn. Ryu feels frustrated, questioning why he wasn't reborn as someone rich or with some overpowered special ability. A mysterious hooded figure observes the group entering the inn, remaining in the shadows of the surrounding forest. The person whispers to themselves, with a determined gaze, that this time they cannot fail in their mission. Inside, the consultants throw piles of scrolls onto the table and demand Ryu fill everything out quickly. They remind him that paying taxes is the basic duty of any citizen of the Central Plains to avoid legal issues. Ryu signs the documents for alcohol and food licenses, feeling that he can finally work honestly. Mr. Cheon pauses for a moment, sensing that a crucial element is still missing for the place's success. They start listing who is already part of the inn's staff to see what's missing. There's that strange dog that looks more like a costume child and never stops causing trouble. There's Ryu Cheongwoon himself as the owner and head chef, but the hall is still empty of staff. They run through the entire inn looking for someone, but the place looks like a desert with no one else around. Mr. Cheon confirms that there's absolutely no one else working there, which is a commercial disaster. The two exchange a knowing, sinister glance, deciding they need to take drastic action immediately. Ryu excitedly finishes the paperwork, asking if they can open the doors and start serving customers already. But the duo announces that the highlight of their management will be the inn's charm, and declares the audition open. A line of bizarre candidates enters the premises, leaving the chef utterly bewildered by what he's seeing. He doesn't understand why he suddenly needs an audition, while the mascot merely watches the scene with curiosity. Candidate number 1 is called to the front of the judging table to showcase their worth and talent. Ryu thinks that if the business grows, having someone to serve tables might not be a bad idea. The man starts performing strange, rhythmic movements, leaving the judges confused by his bodily performance. Suddenly, the fellow starts rhyming about meat dishes and dumplings, acting as if he's on a stage. He unleashes an aggressive rap, stating that payment is up front, or the customer will meet their maker early. Ryu is shocked to realize that rap already existed in ancient China and doesn't know how to react. Mr. Cheon makes a terrible drama, wiping sweat and declaring that performance utterly unacceptable to them. The candidate is immediately disqualified, amidst the protests and surprise of the others waiting in line. The chef asks if they can't just hire someone normal and questions the need for musical talent to serve noodles. Mr. Byon explodes in anger at Ryu's ignorance, letting out a shout that makes the poor young man tremble. He explains with great pomp that the server's voice is the very soul and standard of the inn. Ryu pretends to understand everything out of fear, while the consultant continues yelling about the inn's etiquette. The audition restarts with an even more chaotic energy, with candidates trying everything to impress the panel. A man starts singing off-key, while Mr. Cheon watches with a look of pure judgment. Another candidate attempts an acrobatic dance, but the level of strangeness only increases with each passing second. The mascot enters the fray, and holds up a sign asking for a bowl of noodles, testing the agility of the young men. Ryu enters an existential crisis, unable to understand how he ended up in the middle of a medieval Chinese rap battle. Chaos erupts as candidates try to outdo each other with noise and senseless movements. A bandana-wearing fellow shouts for another bowl, turning the audition into a general uproar of screams. Ryu finally reaches his limit, closes his eyes, and decides that enough is enough of this clownery in his inn. He leaps to his feet and orders everyone to immediately stop the circus they've created inside. The chef makes it clear that his inn is not a place that needs false advertising or forced shows. He firmly states that his establishment is simply a place to eat good food when one is hungry. Ryu concludes by saying it's enough to be a resting place for tired bodies and that they don't need anyone. The consultants call him a pervert and abnormal for not wanting to hire a server to help with the service. The young man ignores the insults and decides he will run the business alone, without relying on theatrical performances in the inn. But the door bursts open violently, and a hooded figure appears, shouting that the audition cannot end yet. Mr. Cheon recognizes the person and is outraged that she followed the group to this remote place. The woman throws herself to the ground and begs the elders for a single chance to prove she can be useful. The consultant laughs at her, reminding her that she herself said she lacked eloquence and that her status was too low. She introduces herself as Chu Garyon and vows to work hard if they just give her a real opportunity. Mr. Cheon continues to humiliate her, saying that a woman of such a suffering appearance could never be an elite server. He states that the final decision rests with Master Ryu, and since he has already said no, the matter is closed. To everyone's surprise, Ryu stares at the woman and says just 2 words that change everything. You passed. He ignores the protests and repeats that she is hired, acting purely out of instinct and compassion for the young woman. Chu Garyon begins to cry with gratitude, thanking her new master for believing in someone like her. Ryu becomes completely flustered with the title of master, while the others whisper that he truly is a pervert. The young woman insists on calling him that, and he eventually accepts, letting out a nervous laugh to hide his complete embarrassment. And so, Chugaryon becomes the inn's newest employee, bringing new hope to the renovated establishment. Ryu hands her an advance on her salary in silver bars, leaving the young woman in absolute shock at the gesture. She bows to the ground again, barely believing Ryu's generosity after having lived in such misery. Garyon swears to dedicate her entire life to her work, while Mr. Cheon still thinks the chef overpaid. The consultant suggests changing the interior decor now that they have resources, and Ryu accepts any help to stabilize the inn. With everything ready and the team formed, preparations for the inn's official reopening finally come to an end. Now, silence reigns as Ryu anxiously awaits the sound of the bell that will announce someone's arrival. He looks at the door, thinking that the first ordinary customer is about to cross the threshold of his establishment. Chugaryon flashes a radiant smile and shouts a welcoming greeting with an energy that illuminates the entire main hall. A man in a straw hat enters, letting out an ironic laugh as he observes the establishment's new look. Ryu freezes upon recognizing the figure, feeling a chill run down his spine as his heart pounds with fear. He internally pleads for the man to leave, as his presence can only mean trouble and total destruction. The man ignores the chef's panic and sarcastically comments that the place finally looks like a real inn. He adjusts his hat, revealing a dangerous gaze from someone who didn't just come for a quiet meal. Garyon continues trying to be gentle, but Ryu realizes that the storm is about to break over his head. 3 more armed men with identical hats enter right behind him, laughing sinisterly and menacingly in the hall. A rival group of yellow bandanas also appears, creating an unbearable tension among those present. Ryu rubs his eyes, praying that this is just a nightmare caused by the extreme fatigue of the renovation. The hall is divided between 2 criminal factions glaring at each other with mortal hatred, completely ignoring the owners of the house. Poor Garyon tries to take orders, but recoils in horror when she realizes no one there actually wants to eat. Ryu pulls her back and warns her that these men are not customers, ordering her to stay quiet and protected. The leaders place silver bars and blades on the tables, signaling that today is the day to settle scores. The chef explains that from this moment on, his inn has become an official battlefield of the martial world. The consultants hide under the table, trembling with fear as they listen to the tense conversation of the rival warriors. Ryu confesses that this isn't the first time troublemakers have turned his business into a wrestling ring. The 2 groups exchange heavy insults, accusing each other of cowardly tactics and ambushes in dark, shadowy forests. The consultant realizes the place has become a tourist spot for fights, and the mascot complains that it's hungry. One of the bandits loses patience and shouts that the idle talk is over, drawing his weapon to begin the slaughter. Ryu laments that the taste of fists and swords will prevail over the flavor of his wonderful cuisine today. The bandits throw themselves at each other in a chaos of blades and screams, breaking everything in their path. The chef despairs watching his inn being destroyed, while the mascot continues to beg for food in the middle of the fight. He knows that if the place becomes famous as a martial arts fighting ground, his business will be ruined forever. Mr. Chon shrinks into a corner, calling Ryu to take cover before a stray blade fatally reaches him. Garyon screams that she will protect her master with her life, but the mascot just wants its hunger sated. In the heat of battle, the young woman tries to act as a shield, but ends up being thrown from side to side. She begs Ryu to trust her, while the poor chef can barely breathe, suffocated by the panic of the situation. Ryu tries to escape the commotion, but the attendant holds him so tightly that he almost loses consciousness right there. A blade barely misses them, making the young woman let out a shriek of terror that echoes through the destroyed hall. The chef is panting and sweating cold, realizing his life hangs by a thread in the hands of a terrified attendant. He questions how she intended to protect him if she was using him as a human shield in the middle of the violent crossfire. Ryu decides they need to get out of there now if they want to see tomorrow's sun, but the chaos blocks all exits. They run desperately trying to find a path between broken tables and warriors killing each other mercilessly. An authoritative female voice emerges from the entrance, asking why the interior of this place is so noisy and chaotic. Ryu and Garyon stop abruptly, coming face to face with a woman in purple robes and an extremely dangerous aura. The chef thinks for a second that she might be another customer, but her gaze says the situation has just gotten worse. He almost bumps into her and freezes, feeling that this woman is much more powerful than all the other bandits combined. The newcomer says she doesn't care about the business's performance, but her patience has already reached its absolute limit. She stares at Ryu with cold eyes and asks if he has a death wish for making so much noise. Her masked guards appear behind her like shadows, ready to execute any order she gives now. The woman in purple states that she will kill them quickly because she is busy, while Garyon begs to keep the body. She asks if he is Ryu Cheongwoon, and the chef stutters in terror, not knowing how this woman knows his name. With a swift movement, she ignores the pleas for help and begins to clear the hall in a brutal and efficient manner. She snorts in irritation, commenting on how irritating this whole situation and these people are to her plans. The lady decides that the first thing to do is take care of this general mess that interrupted her triumphant arrival. The air fills with murderous energy as she prepares to show why she is feared throughout the entire Murim. The bandits who were fighting each other now tremble with fear before the authority emanating from this mysterious woman. They wonder who these new intruders are, arriving with such arrogance and overwhelming power in the midst of their brawl. She dismisses the brawlers as small fry and orders them to leave immediately if they wish to keep breathing and remain among the living. The woman in purple declares she has important business to attend to in this inn and will tolerate no further trivial interruptions. The sect leaders try to maintain their composure, asking if she truly doesn't recognize their power in this dangerous neighborhood. One of the bandits makes a misogynistic comment about marriage, insulting the woman's honor before all his men. He warns her not to meddle in men's affairs, but his words are cut short by a sudden sharp pain. She strikes him with a poisoned needle and demands to know how he dares utter such nonsense in the lands of the Tang Clan. The bandit recognizes the sect's name and panics, realizing this woman is the heir to the family of poisons. She reveals herself as the daughter of the Sichuan Tang Clan and orders them all to die for insulting her lineage. Terror spreads as the bandits realize they've been poisoned and begin to beg for their miserable lives. The hall transforms into a scene of horror, with men collapsing and writhing in agony under the effect of the lethal toxins. With a cruel smile, she declares that poison discriminates against no one and watches the results of her deadly technique. The warriors try to plead for a future duel, but the poison is already acting too swiftly on their nervous systems. Screams of agony echo as they lose their sight and feel their hands burn under the corrosive poison's effect. The building trembles with the desperate flight of the survivors, who promise vengeance as they flee from the scene. Now, with the hall empty, the woman in purple complains she's expended too much energy and demands Ryu feed her immediately. She demands to taste the famous black bean noodles, keeping Ryu under her constant gaze as he begins to cook. The chef's hands tremble as he handles the wok, knowing his life depends on the flavor of this meal for the lady. He realizes this terrifying woman belongs to one of the most lethal and dangerous groups in all of Murim. Ryu remembers that the Sichuan Tang Clan is the pinnacle of poison arts and assassination techniques in the plains. They operate from Sichuan as representatives of the great sects, equally feared by friends and foes alike. The heir is none other than Tang Youngyoung, the only daughter of the poison mate patriarch, a ruthless assassin. Ryu imagines the demonic figure behind her, feeling the heavy burden of serving such a deadly and powerful client. He only hopes she will leave peacefully after eating, without turning his kitchen into a poison laboratory. The inn's signature dish is served with perfection, exuding an aroma that dominates the entire ruined environment. Tang Youngyoung observes the noodles and admits the smell is great, while Ryu prays his seasoning saves his life. But Tang Youngyoung brooks no questioning and snaps, "You're so ignorant, you know nothing." She explains that in the Tang Clan, the fingers that handle deadly poisons must never touch food or drink. Ryu swallows hard, realizing that every detail of this woman's life is focused on killing and not dying. Youngyoung admits the smell is good, but declares, the decisive factor is texture. Without it, it's just animal feed. The chef smiles internally, for if the challenge is texture, he is more confident than ever in his technique. In that era, the standard was dry pasta, stretched and left in the sun until it lost all its vitality. It would be like modern Japanese noodles, which break easily and lack that explosive elasticity in the mouth. But the dough Ryu prepares for the black bean sauce is handmade, crafted with brute force. He uses a concept that would only be discovered 500 years later, a secret preserved in ancient health books. For the martial arts masters of that era, what Ryu is creating is something out of time, an impossible technology. It is the unique elasticity and chewy tenderness that only manual labor can extract from wheat and water. Youngyoung feels the noodles resist her teeth as if they have a life of their own, something no one has ever experienced before. The guards watch in shock as their master devours the dish with an almost animalistic voracity. Ryu achieves the pinnacle of texture, transforming the simple act of eating into a cinematic event. She can barely speak as she asks how he managed to create something like this. But the chef isn't finished yet. When he adds the tianmian sauce, the explosion of flavor and seasoning hits the poisonous butterfly like a direct blow. It's an overwhelming experience that makes the world around her disappear amidst the pleasure of the meal. Ryu watches with satisfaction, knowing his life now depends on the ecstasy shining in the assassin's eyes. It's so elastic and soft, she sighs, completely surrendered to a flavor that defies logic. Suddenly, her body falters, and Youngyoung collapses onto the table, sending everyone around into a state of panic. "Young mistress, are you all right?" her subordinates shout, fearing the chef has committed the ultimate error. Ryu goes into shock, wondering if she too suffers from a fatal allergy like the one that almost killed him earlier. Fear chills the cook's blood, for if anything happens to her, he won't leave that hall alive. But Youngyoung abruptly rises and grabs Ryu by the collar, panting and with her face flushed. "You truly are incredible, aren't you?" she admits, as Chugaryeon watches the scene, utterly bewildered. The tension mounts as Youngyoung realizes what just happened, desperately trying to hide her embarrassment at having been utterly overwhelmed by the flavor. Ryu, worried, asks if she's truly all right, but the eye contact is too much for the proud heiress to handle. "What are you doing now?" she snaps, as he checks her pulse with a trembling hand. The chef notes her temperature has soared, but before he can utter a word, the world around them collapses. A brutal impact shatters the inn's structure and roof, throwing Ryu to the ground amidst the debris. "How dare you use such strange tricks on me?" Youngyoung screams, trying to regain her authoritative posture. She swears that if it weren't for the mission, things would be different, as Ryu struggles to get his bearings amidst the chaos. That's when an ancient scroll appears, bearing the official seal of the Jaegal Clan Patriarch. Youngyoung orders him to read it immediately, for it is a direct message from her uncle Jaegal. Ryu realizes the two families have deep ties, which explains how she knew so much about his cooking. The letter warns that the 80th birthday of the Poison King is approaching, and it will be a monumental celebration. Just imagining the Tang Clan Patriarch sends a shiver down Ryu's spine. He wants no part of these monsters. But Patriarch Jaegal Clan makes it clear that, due to certain circumstances, he won't be able to attend in person. The bombshell drops. Ryu must attend the banquet in his stead, representing the prestigious Jaegal clan before everyone. "You heard it. Now stop dawdling and let's get out of here," Youngyoung orders, leaving no room for refusal. Their destination is Chengdu, the dark heart of the Tang clan's lands, where danger lurks around every corner. Chengdu, the impregnable fortress at the center of Sichuan, a place where the law of the strong is the only one that matters. A legendary land that was once the capital of emperors and now houses the greatest masters of deadly arts. As a history buff, Ryu had always wanted to visit this place, but he never imagined he'd be like a walking target. During the journey, Youngyoung devours the provisions and asks if ring-shaped dumplings have always been this delicious. The whole group indulges, treating Ryu like a culinary slave while he carries the weight of all the luggage. He tries to explain that these aren't snacks, but emergency rations for the next few weeks on the road. She wants no excuses and demands more, completely oblivious that the chef has transformed something hard and bland into a work of art. Originally, these rations were made simply to last a long time, with no concern for taste whatsoever. But Ryu mixed milk, eggs, and let the dough ferment before frying, creating the ancestor of the modern donut. With a melted sugar glaze, he created the glazed donut, an absolute hit in any century. Of course it would be better than eating flour rocks, but Ryu forgot a fundamental detail about good food. The problem with making such delicious emergency rations is that they run out in mere minutes. The chef sighs, worried about what he left behind as he heads towards the enemy's lair. He wonders if Garyon and the other experts are taking good care of the inn in his absence. But Youngyoung's voice snaps him back to reality, demanding he hurry up and stop complaining. Ryu wonders when he'll finally be able to have a normal, peaceful business like any other owner. Night falls over the Sichuan mountains, and the group decides to camp near an isolated waterfall. Once again, Ryu is the only one working, setting up the tents while the others merely watch. He asks for help with the luggage, but the masked bodyguards claim they need to remain agile to protect their young mistress. When he suggests they help with dinner, they prefer to go hunting for a deer just to avoid the hard work. Ryu accepts his bitter fate of preparing the meal alone, feeling the weight of exhaustion on his shoulders. Suddenly, he sees Youngyoung by the fire and is surprised to realize she's actually trying to cook. She asks if he wants to taste the soup she prepared, and Ryu becomes genuinely curious about the result. She explains that her grandfather always says a woman needs to know how to cook before getting married, which sends a chill down the chef's spine. But upon tasting it, a sharp crack echoes. Ugh, my teeth and jaw. It feels like I just chewed a rock. Ryu panics, remembering that the Tang Clan are masters of poisons and silent assassinations. He imagines the soup brimming with deadly toxins, seasoned with agony and the Patriarch's sadistic smile. However, Youngyoung reveals the truth. That is literally a stone she put in the cauldron. She explains it's the famous stone soup, where you need to choose the right stones to eat. Ryu is speechless as he watches the little assistant munching on the stones as if they were crunchy biscuits. He recalls reading about it in ancient culinary books, stones covered in algae that flavor the broth. Youngyoung grows insecure with his silence and asks if it tastes that bad. The chef asks for a moment and decides he cannot allow such a culinary atrocity to continue existing. He commands his small assistant to bring the 7 number 3 with carrots, eggs, and his shallow wok. The little one rushes to help. Even without understanding half of the technical terms, Ryu shouts. Utensils fly through the air as Ryu Cheongwoon enters his state of absolute focus in the kitchen. He handles the ingredients with a speed that ordinary eyes can barely follow in the dark. Youngyoung watches, fascinated, sensing that this man completely transforms when he holds a spatula. He explains that the secret is to separate the moss first, using salt and pepper to remove the earthy taste. The glint in Ryu's eyes and the rising aroma make her stomach rumble with anticipation. She tries to maintain her arrogant posture, calling him insolent and demanding he finish the dish quickly. Finally, the algae-style stone noodles are ready, exuding a scent that dominates the camp. She's suspicious at first, thinking he just boiled everything together, but the first spoonful changes everything. The poisonous butterfly's eyes widen as layers of flavor hit her taste buds. It's different. It's so much more flavorful. How did you do this? She asks in absolute shock. Youngyoung accuses the chef of using some secret ingredient or forbidden technique from the culinary murum. Ryu shrugs and says he merely adjusted the seasoning and focused on what she valued most. Texture. He explains that he added fried carrots and omelet to provide the crunch that complements the noodle's softness. To him, it's just the basics, but to her, it's as if he performed a miracle before her eyes. She insists it makes no sense, as the best chefs in her household try to do this every day. She demands the truth, pointing a finger at him and wanting to know the real secret behind such flavor. Ryu strikes a dramatic pose under the moonlight and declares that the only secret is effort and dedication. He claims that understanding the heart of the diner is what transforms simple ingredients into a true feast. Inside, Ryu breathes a sigh of relief, hiding the MSG packet he used to ensure success. His unique flavor's true secret is a modern additive that no one there could ever replicate. But Youngyoung notices something strange in his demeanor and abruptly attacks him mid-poetic explanation. "You're still insolent in front of me!" she screams, while he begs for forgiveness and swears that MSG isn't harmful. She gets too close, complaining about his lips that only speak nonsense, leaving the chef in a dangerous situation. Ryu freezes, unsure if he's about to be kissed or executed right there in front of his subordinates. That's when screams interrupt the moment, and masked guards emerge from the shadows, in total panic. They warn her to be careful, as something terrible is approaching their camp. The poisonous butterfly tries to remain calm, but the presence emerging from the forest is overwhelming and heavy. A colossal figure appears, tearing through the vegetation, and the sound of cracking branches echoes like thunder. "What brings the young lady of the Tang Clan to the green forest?" asks the deep, menacing voice. The giant man glares at the group with a look that would make any ordinary warrior faint from sheer terror. She recognizes the monster immediately. It's Ibu, the legendary leader of the Noklimdo bandit alliance. The group of bandits surrounds Ryu and Youngyoung, transforming the night into a scene of deadly ambush. Ryu panics, remembering that Noklimdo is the largest union of criminals in all the Central Plains. They are 72 brutal bandit branches that dominate the forests and follow no one's rules. Ibu asks why she's silent, his physical presence occupying almost all the space around her. He observes that the woman came alone into his territory, which sparks a dangerous curiosity in the giant. The bandit leader seems to be hiding something behind that mask of brutality and brute force. Flashbacks reveal that Ibu actually finds Youngyoung extremely cute and desperately wants to be her friend. But being an uneducated brute, he has no idea how to approach a lady in a civilized manner. He complains to his men that no one there understands women, and they live in a toxic and crude environment. That's when they introduce Choi Jung, a new recruit said to be an expert in the female heart. Choi Jung teaches that to win a woman over, one must start with a simple conversation and a direct question. Ibu is impressed by the new soldier's intelligence and decides to put the plan into action immediately. Back in the present, the giant tries to initiate the said conversation, but his intimidating demeanor ruins everything. He tries to smile, but the resulting expression looks more like a cruel death sentence than a flirtation. Ryu and Youngyoung enter absolute panic, thinking Ibu is furious and about to slaughter everyone. She tries to explain that they are just passing through his territory, with no intention of causing any trouble. Ibu is happy inside, thinking the dialogue is flowing naturally according to Choi Jung's tips. Youngyoung appeals to the historical friendship between the Tang Clan and Noklimdo to avert a bloody conflict. The giant falls silent, trying to recall the next step of his infallible plan to win the maiden over. The silence stretches, and the tension mounts, with both sides awaiting a move that could be their last. Ryu can barely breathe under the weight of the murderous aura he believes is emanating from the bandit leader. Ibu plunges into internal despair, realizing he's forgotten his lines and has no idea how to continue the social interaction. Youngyoung whispers that they are like wild beasts, and perhaps communication is truly impossible here. Choi Jung appears in the shadows and signals for the boss to show off his mature charm and sincerity. He says women fall for men dedicated to their work, and Ibu decides to take this literally. The giant approaches ominously and declares that, to resolve the impasse, he has a special demand. "I demand the head of one of your clan members as payment," he roars, thinking he's being charming. His subordinates are awestruck, believing their boss has reached a level of charm beyond all limits. Youngyoung is shell-shocked by the absurd request, while Ryu tries to become invisible to avoid being chosen. Ibu points to the masked guard, stating he is necessary for the lady's journey to the very end. The little assistant observes the chaos and continues eating, oblivious to the fate of other people's heads. Suddenly, Ibu's gaze shifts to the only one left in the circle, Ryu Cheongwoon, who feels the ground give way beneath him. The giant asks who he is, but before any answer, Youngyoung steps in front of him. She moves with an agility barely visible, shielding the cook with her own body. The poisonous butterfly will not allow her source of legendary noodles to be decapitated by a bandit. "You've crossed the line, Ibu," she declares, her gaze cold and her needles ready to strike. Her subordinates encourage the attack, while Ryu pleads for no one to do anything stupid and dangerous. He knows that the trained bodies of the Noklimdo bandits are immune to almost all the Tang Clan's lighter techniques. In despair, the guards suggest it's better to hand over Ryu's insignificant head to save the rest. She stares firmly at the giant, aware that the situation is spiraling out of control with each passing second. Ibu hesitates, his heart pounding with the proximity of the woman he secretly admires so much. Suddenly, Youngyoung touches the giant's colossal hand, trying to calm him so he'll listen. "Your hand, please," Just listen to me first, she pleads, ignoring the effect of the touch on her. Ibu short-circuits internally. He can't believe she touched him voluntarily, and his nose explodes in blood. Without understanding how, the group finally manages to reach the fortified mansion of the Tang Clan in Sichuan. Ryu and the little assistant are awestruck by the opulence and sinister air that dominates the entire complex. Serpent statues and poisonous mists warn that this is the abode of death, manifested in tradition and power. An imposing man with a peculiar mustache awaits the group, ready to receive the representative of the Jaegal Clan. He calls Ryu Cheongwoon by name, his voice echoing with an authority that makes the chef's legs tremble. Ryu coughs from the toxic mist, while the assistant happily runs, oblivious to the deadly danger of the atmosphere. The Patriarch says he's heard good things about Ryu through Cheon, and that he saved his daughter's life in the past. The chef realizes his fame preceded him, and that all the great clans are watching his culinary footsteps. Youngyoung's father asks if she caused any trouble during the journey to Sichuan, which chills Ryu's blood. Behind him, she makes a signal that he will die if he tells the truth about the abuses and violence he endured. There was no error at all, sir, just intentional violence. He lies, sweating cold under her gaze. Satisfied with the answer, the elder orders Ryu to rest and says he already has a reserved place to stay. Ryu and the little assistant only think of food and rest, while the Patriarch observes the young man with a hidden plan. In the mansion's shadows, he reveals that he intends to bring Ryu into the family in a very near and profitable future. Youngyoung complains about the chef's insignificant appearance, but inwardly, their destiny is already being shaped by greater forces. The final revelation echoes through the corridors. Ryu Cheongwoon is to marry the sole daughter of the powerful Jaegal clan. But what does this mean for the chef who only wanted to cook in peace? The Poison King's banquet is just beginning. Now, a chef who just wanted to cook is caught in a power struggle that could cost him his freedom, or worse, his life. But what no one expects is that this forced alliance might be the key to a much greater danger. Want to know what happens in part 2? Comment below.